All right, let's dive into Indigo by Louis Fischer. Now, this isn't just another chapter in your textbook. Seriously, this story is basically the blueprint for India's very first major win against the British, and it was all done with a brand new weapon called civil disobedience. This is where the fight for freedom really got started.
And it all boils down to this one question, doesn't it? How could one single, unbelievably stubborn farmer spark a movement that would challenge the entire British Empire and change the course of history? Well, let's find out.
So where does this whole thing kick off? Our story begins right here with a resolute peasant's quest. And what's so important about this is that the story doesn't start with a famous leader like Gandhi. Nope, it starts with an ordinary farmer whose quest for justice got the ball rolling.
Okay, so let's get to know our hero, Rajkumar Shukla. The book tells us he was poor, really thin, but the one word you have to remember, the most important word, is resolute. It means he was incredibly determined. I mean, he was just one of thousands of farmers being exploited, but he was the one who decided, enough is enough, I'm going to do something about this.
So what was the big problem? It was this thing called the sharecropping system. And let me tell you, it was completely unjust. Just imagine this for a second. You're a farmer, you work your own land, but the British landlords force you to plant 15% of it with indigo. And then, get this, you have to give them the entire harvest from that land as rent. It was a setup designed for one thing: exploitation.
So what does Shukla do? He travels all the way to a major political conference with a single goal: get help. And while he's there, someone gives him a piece of advice that would change everything. They basically say, you should probably go talk to a guy named Gandhi. And that right there sets the whole story in motion.
Okay, so Shukla finally convinces Gandhi to come to Bihar. What happens next? Well, this brings us to our second section: investigation meets intimidation. See, when Gandhi shows up, he doesn't just start a bunch of protests. That wasn't his style. His approach was super careful, methodical, and based entirely on getting the facts straight. Now, you really got to pay attention to this slide, because it shows you exactly how Gandhi operated. He was like a detective building a case. First, he goes to a nearby town to gather more information, to get the full story. Second, he meets with lawyers to understand the legal side of things. And third, he goes straight to the opposition, the British landlords, to hear their side. It was a masterclass in how to prepare for a fight. And you know, even before he takes on the British, he does something really telling. He confronts the local Indian lawyers. He basically calls them out for charging these massive fees to the poor farmers they were supposed to be helping. You see, for Gandhi, this wasn't just about winning a legal battle. It was about freeing the peasants from fear and exploitation, even if it came from their own side.
So Gandhi's trying to get the facts, right? How do the British react? Well, they slam the door in his face. The Landlords Association tells him he's an outsider in his own country and they won't give him any information. Then, the British commissioner straight up tries to bully him, ordering him to leave the area immediately. The message couldn't be clearer: back off.
And this right here is the turning point. The British officials thought a simple order would scare Gandhi away. They thought he'd pack his bags and run. Boy, were they wrong. They made a huge, historic miscalculation.
I want you to picture this scene. A government official hands Gandhi a legal notice telling him to leave. Gandhi takes it, signs the paper to show he got it, and then he just calmly writes on it that he's going to disobey the order. That one simple, quiet, non-violent act was a declaration of war on an unjust law.
Later in court, Gandhi explains himself, and what he says is absolutely groundbreaking. He talks about having a conflict of duties. On one hand, yeah, he doesn't want to be a lawbreaker, but on the other hand, he has a much bigger duty to the people he came to help. So he says he's choosing to listen to a higher law, the voice of conscience.
So, what's the result of this one act of defiance? Absolute chaos for the British. The peasants, who had been terrified their whole lives, suddenly find their courage. They show up by the thousands to support Gandhi. The government is completely baffled, the judge doesn't know what to do, and the whole system is paralyzed. In the end, they drop the case. And just like that, for the first time ever in modern India, civil disobedience had won.
But look, winning in court? That was just the warm-up act. The main event was the official government inquiry into the whole sharecropping mess, and this is where Gandhi played his cards perfectly.
Okay, here's something that trips up a lot of students. So let's clear it up. The inquiry proved the landlords had been cheating the peasants. So why on earth did Gandhi agree to a settlement where the farmers only got 25% of their money back? It sounds like a bad deal, right? Like a loss. But it wasn't.
Here's the answer.
It was never, ever about the money. Gandhi understood that for the British landlords, it was all about pride and prestige. By forcing them to give back any amount of money, even just 25%, he was forcing them to admit they were wrong. They had to surrender not just their money, but their prestige. And that was a huge psychological blow. For the peasants, it was a massive win. They saw that the landlords weren't all-powerful gods. They learned they had rights, and they learned how to be brave. That was the real victory.
So, the landlords have been humbled, the peasants got some money back. Mission accomplished, right? Not for Gandhi. He knew the economic battle was won, but the real war was against the peasants' own fear. Gandhi looked around and saw the real root of the problem wasn't just the British. It was poverty, bad sanitation, illiteracy. So instead of just leaving after the legal victory, he stayed. He started a whole new campaign to improve the basic living conditions in the villages.
He called in volunteers from all over India. They didn't just hand out money. They opened schools. They brought in doctors. They taught people simple things like personal hygiene and how to keep their villages clean. The goal wasn't to be a savior who solved all their problems. The goal was to empower the people to solve their own problems. He was building self-reliance. And this story perfectly captures his whole philosophy. At one point, a friendly Englishman named C.F. Andrews offered to stay and help their cause. But Gandhi said no, absolutely not. He told the others, if we rely on an Englishman to help us win, it just shows the weakness in our own hearts. The cause was right, and they had to learn to win their own fights, by themselves. It was a powerful lesson in self-reliance.
And this slide really breaks it all down. This is the core theme of the entire chapter. See, legal justice, the kind you get in court, is about money, and it's usually just a temporary fix. But true freedom? That's something different. That's a battle you fight in your own mind. It's about finding courage and becoming self-reliant. And that kind of freedom is permanent. That's what Gandhi was really teaching in Champaran.
So, when you put it all together, from Rajkumar Shukla's stubborn plea to Gandhi's lessons in courage, what's the big takeaway? What's the ultimate message of the Indigo story?
Here it is. The story of Champaran teaches us that a nation's independence isn't about signing a piece of paper. It's built on a foundation of people. People who are brave, people who rely on their own strength, and people who stand together to fight for what's right. That was the lesson of Champaran, and it became the lesson for all of India.